I want to introduce union types. This is a new thought that you may not have seen in Java before or other languages, at least not using that term, certainly. And the idea behind union types, and we'll get into details in a moment, is, hey, I want to go ahead and say I want to pass into a function or get back from a function something that is maybe a string or a number, okay? And that's something we don't usually see, especially in typed languages. It may not be possible to do that, say, in Java directly. Okay, before we go there, I want to just review a couple things, because we're going to be using both of these in what we talk about. We talk about signatures of functions, and I'm introducing some of these things in racket. So racket has a function called string equal. Can you guess what the signature is? Totally by just looking at the name and wondering, guessing what that function does. Can you get the signature? Go ahead and pause and maybe type it out. And what I'm looking for, answer, string equal, takes two strings and tells you if they're the same. Okay, so it's a dot equals, but just on strings, if you will. Takes in a string and another string and returns a Boolean. And so that's how we're writing that. There's another function, and it's spelled very similarly, but it's a different function. It's called string. Can you guess what the signature of that is? This may be a little bit tricky, but pause, think about it, see if you can write it. I'll go ahead and say string takes in anything and returns a Boolean. And we can try some of these things down here. String equal of Cathay with substring catamaran. Actually, no, substring, how about cat? That's what I wanted. And substring catamaran 03. And string equal says, yep, those are both evaluate to the same string. String of cat, true. String question mark of 17, false. Okay. So yeah, string question mark is interesting. That can take in anything at all. If you said, hey, it takes in a string and returns a Boolean and says whether or not that string is a string, that'd be kind of a useless function. I could write return true, and that would be a function that took in a string and told you whether or not it was a string. So, okay. Great. That's our first question. Second thing to remind us of, what are those 4 steps of the design recipe that we've been introduced to? Steps 4, 5, 7, and 8. Pause. See if you can actually come up with them. Don't necessarily go back. See if you can come up with what was the first thing we did when writing a function, and then continue. Okay, and answers are, the answers I'm looking for is first we would write tests, write our test cases, then go ahead and do, I think I maybe called it SSS, do a signature, a purpose statement, and stub, and maybe the defined, but included in the stub would be just the defined statement that includes the name of the parameters and so on. Okay, anyway, just, basically stub out your function. Then you can go ahead and complete the function body, and hopefully your test should pass. Okay, so we're going to follow these same steps as we discuss this new idea of what is a union type. Okay, so first of all, let me go ahead and I want to introduce a new type to us. Well, it's going to be a type in our program. Say we want to deal with, we've got a job with the registrars, and we want to deal with usernames a lot. And I'm going to go ahead and say that an example, or that a username is a string. And so what do we have at our school here? It's a string of one or more lowercase Roman letters, possibly followed by digits. And the total length has to be at least 1 character and less than 14. So in the half open interval 1 to 14. Okay. And so yeah, what's the interpreter? So give me such a string, that's their username, that string. Can you give me some examples of this data type, just so we make sure we're on the same wavelength? Go ahead and see if you can write down 3 examples that meet this definition. Okay. iBarlin, that's one definition. It's a string, so when I give my examples, I'll actually put them in quotes. So this will be actual code, or an actual valid expression. Okay. What else can it be? Hey, I want to test out the fact that it might end in digits. So yeah, I might go ahead and have something like iBarland 702, 720. There we are. What else? Hey, it might only be one letter long. Let me have a test case that does that. So X. According to this definition, that's a valid username. Okay, so great. Now let's get on to what we really want to do. I might go and have some code that looks up a student in a database and tries to get their contact information or something like that, and then uses that, the result of that query. Okay, so here's the problem. When I go and try to look up a student, ideally I want to get back their username. That'd be cool. So I want to write a function. I'm like, hey, the return type, or this function will be given a username that it got from the database and can go ahead and do stuff with that. Here's the issue though. When you make that database query about somebody, the thing you're given, the thing my code will be given, hopefully it's a username, but maybe that person being asked for didn't really exist. So it could be a username, or it could be some value saying, oh, no, there is no username. Okay. Now, if in Java, I'd say, hey, use a string for the username, and I'll use null to represent that person doesn't exist. Why null type checks as a string? It's kind of weird that if Java says null from the type checker, it thinks null is a string. Null's not a string. You can't do a string append with it. Can't take a substring of it. Okay. Okay, fair enough. But there's one more thing I want to worry about. I might get back a username. I might get back, hey, that wasn't a valid student. I might get back, oh, that's a valid student, but their contact information is confidential. Okay, so what do we do then? Gosh, I need a way to represent that. I kind of need two sentinel values, not just one, if you will. Okay, so here's what I'll do. I'll say that what we get back from the database, a lookup result. I want a new type called lookup result. And that's what I get back from a database. My function might be given a lookup result and need to work with it. Okay, a lookup result is one of a username or the Boolean false. That's going to represent that name wasn't found. Or it's going to be the symbol private, tick private. Okay, so and again we have these interpretations of what these things mean. So I'm going to call this a union data type. It's either a username or false, or the particular symbol private. Okay, so how do I deal with that? Well, first of all, let's just make sure we're on the same page. Can we give several examples of this type of data? Several examples of a lookup result. Go ahead and pause the video, see if you can get them. And you're right. Well, certainly I can get 3 right here. These 3 are usernames, which are all valid lookup results. Okay. Anything else could be a lookup result? Yeah, there's hash false and tick private. These are all examples of this weird new type I've made up called a lookup result. I want to define a whole new type called a lookup result. Okay. When I say this data definition here, from then on, once I say, hey, I've defined this new type, I'm allowed to use that type in my signatures. Hey, I'm going to write a function that takes in a lookup result. Or, hey, the return type of this function I wrote is a lookup result, or whatever you like. Okay. Let's look how we write a function that would take in a lookup result. Let's see what we'd need to do. Okay. Let's write a function which, given a lookup result, returns a string, either their email address at Radford. So if you give it something like iBarland, you might get back ibarland@radford.edu. Or you'll get back the string no such person, or you'll get back the string information not published. Okay, so we want to write a function that will be given a lookup result. So if somebody else made a database query, get something back and handed that result to us to do. And we're going to return a string, always return a string. Okay. Okay, so what are some, can we make some test cases here? Yeah, you know, here's one good reason I have these test cases that I made. I'm going to use, or sorry, these examples of the data, I'm going to use these and copy paste them down into my test cases. So I'll call this lookup result to string maybe. So it's like a toString, I guess. Hey, if you gave me false, I'll return the string no such person. And here's my runnable test case. How about if you gave me tick private? Oh, the problem spec says, hey, return that information not published. Okay, there we are. By the way, I'm going to look at this problem spec, and I'm going to be very careful to make sure that I include the punctuation and the capitalization that was in the spec that my boss gave me. Yeah, so I might lose points if I change the capitalization or spelling or anything like that. Okay, but what if they give me something like iBarland? Well, then I'll go ahead and return iBarland@radford.edu. Okay, so that's the function that I want to write. Let's go ahead and see if we can do that. We're going to write that function. What are the steps of the design recipe? Steps 4, 5, 7, and 8. Ah, right, step 4 was test. We just did our test. Hey, wow, hey, we're on track. Let's do the next step, step 5. Step 5 says go ahead and give me the signature and stub this thing out, the header of the function. So when I say, first of all, let's do the signature. Lookup result to string. It's going to take in some type and return some type. What type is it going to return? It's going to return a string. What type does it take in? It's taking in, hey, let me see if I can get this all on this screen here. I said that, hey, when we do this data definition, lookup result is now its own valid type. It's like making a new class lookup result in Java or something like that. So yeah, what do I feed my function? I'm going to feed it a lookup result. And now we notice that the signature actually almost looks like the function name. Conversion functions might well look like that. Okay. So, okay. How are we going to write this function? Let me finish, sorry, stubbing it out. So that's the signature of the function. Okay. Write a purpose statement. And a also open paren define. Let me go ahead and write, stub out this function. I'm going to say, hey, this function lookup result of the string, figure out a name for its parameter. It's just a generic lookup result. I don't know anything more special about it. It's not necessarily looking up the valedictorian or looking up the university's president's kid's name or something like that. So I'll just call it ALR, a lookup result. Again, it's sort of a generic name because it can be any lookup result. Okay. And my purpose statement, notice that my purpose statement mentions my parameter by name. Good. Probably should always have that. Okay. So now I can do this, and now I can try running my function and see what I get. And I'm not quite sure what's down below in my file here. Will this work? Ran 6 tests. None of them passed. It actually returned stubbity McStub, and I was expecting no such person, and so on. Yeah, that's fine. But I got my syntax correct. Everything seems to be running, aside from failing all the test cases. Check that right now. We've done step 4, make test cases. Step 5, stub out my function. And now we're ready to go on to step 7. Okay? So, step 7. How am I going to do this? Well, I want to handle, gosh, the thing I'm given might really, I know it's a lookup result, but a lookup result, we have a definition, is either one of those things, either a username or the Boolean false or the symbol private. And I need to do something different in each case. In fact, just to use them, just for my program to use them, I can't do a string append if I'm given a Boolean or a symbol. If I'm given a string, I can do a string append. Let's figure out which of these 3 types of lookup result I'm actually given. Okay, so there's a new thing here. I'm introducing this keyword as we go. Racket has something called cond. It's conditional statements, an if-else if. And I'm going to say, if I have a string, ... else if I have a boolean, ... else if I have a symbol, ... Okay, so string of a lookup result. If so, well, then I'll do something with that. Okay. I have a LR, a lookup result. What if it's a boolean? Well, I'll do something in that case. And what if it is a symbol? Okay. So this is a cond expression. It's the if-else if, and the answers to each case need to go in the ... dots. Okay. And I'll come back and remind us about exactly this and what these square braces are, but basically think of this as a bunch of question-answer pairs. Is it a string? If so, here's going to be the answer. And we're going to group the question-answer pair with the square brackets. So that's what you're seeing. Okay. So this is pretty good. I kind of like this right now. In fact, I like this so much, I'm going to go ahead and, for the moment, copy it. And I'm going to go up here and paste it up here. We'll come back. But I'll put it into a comment. Okay. Okay, gosh. Well, if I have a string, what do I want to do? Oh, that's something I'm given iBarland, and I'm going to think about having these examples of the data is going to be kind of nice in these examples of the test cases. Hey, if I was given iBarland, I want to return that. If I was given any string, all I want to do is a string append. String append of that lookup result with at Radford. They haven't named the university after me yet. I might be waiting a long time. I don't know why I keep typing LOR. Okay. Okay, yeah, if I'm given a string, that should be my answer. If I'm given a Boolean, my answer should be, I'm going to copy and paste from up here. If I was given false, then that had better be the answer. Okay. And if I was given tick private, then that had better be my answer. Okay, so that's our code. Let's go ahead and run it. So we've done steps 4 and 5, and we just finished 7, which leaves step 8. Gosh, hey, our test pass. Okay, let's take a little break, and the next video is going to talk a little bit about cond and a little bit some questions you might have about how we used cond with these particular 3 questions and what happens if you had other types of input.